There was one enemy that rose during the Horus Heresy that the Imperium did not see coming, and only one lowly tech adept of the Mechanicum had the right knowledge to combat it. In the Era of Ruin story, System Purge by Gav Thorpe, we get a taste of the horror that chaos can visit upon not just the flesh, but even the mechanical. After the Iron Warriors up and leave the Siege of Terra, abandoning the offensive, they left behind an infection, a rot, that took root within the Lionsgate Spaceport, the mechanical flesh hybridizing disease known as the Obliterator Virus. And little did the Mechanicum team dispatched to deal with it know, it had the capability of ruining everything. For in the wake of the heresy, it was known that the Ultramarines fleet, along with their Primarch Roboute Guilliman, was to arrive soon upon Terra, and the Lionsgate Spaceport was to receive some of the ships, and possibly Guilliman himself. So everything had to be on the up and up. Quarf is our hero, or at least our most point of view character. It seems to be his story for the most part. And he's a tech adept, but honestly, he's pretty low on the Mechanicum totem pole, just a slightly augmented human, having most of his flesh still intact. A few brain alterations to make him able to upload and download data and whatnot, but he's certainly not some super mechadendrite kitted out cyborg with 1,000 data ports and tentacles. Mostly human, otherwise, other than lungs and heart modifications to survive on Mars. But his boss on this mission is a Magus named Theoclea, a full conversion Borg, to use Rift's parlance, that has only a few human organs left. Her head is on a telescoping iron neck that is segmented and can turn 360 degrees, which is kind of Linda Blair in The Exorcist inspired, I want to say, but in my head, I kept seeing Inspector Gadget when thinking about it. She's got a crazy steel mask for a face that's not even her own face, but a sculpture of a famous Imperial martyr, Adeline Acretes Sigma 7. And her hair is seriously awesome, a mane of mechadendrites, like really fine and small ones that can each interact with the environment around her. She's totally rad, actually, but fails at having the one thing that Quarf does. Knowledge of the warp, of chaos, of demons, of the heretical, basically. To her, it's all just ones and zeros, all just the machine god's will. She's kind of a fanatic. They quickly meet up with a tech priest from Metallica that is in charge of a few servitors that are kitted out as battle automata and have multi-lasers. His name is Rakbani, and he's short and has multiple extra lower limbs. Some are leg-like, but others have wheels, and he sort of walks and sort of rolls. Real creepy Mechanicum guy, as you'd expect. And rounding out their crew is a tech marine from the White Scars Legion, Tetjo. And the White Scars are still fighting to take back Terra, even as the Khan lies dying and the Emperor fights Horus, even after that, after the end and the death. So the Mechanicum team is happy to have a tech marine along, especially as they had to contact the Scars and let the Sons of the Kagan know they would be operating in the area, and also why. Just to avoid confusion and friendly fire, basically. And the Lionsgate Spaceport is interesting, as the area that they need to go to is literally in low orbit, or upper atmosphere. Tetjo has fought in the area recently, and he knows that what they are up against is not just Dark Mechanicum troops, as the Magos Theoclea's intelligence suggests. He knows that the effects of chaos have changed both man and machine, both flesh and steel, and that new monsters lurk in the shadows of the spaceport. He also knows that if they want to take it back, then they must assault it from the top down and go in, clean it out, and then accomplish their mission, which was to purge all mechanical and electronic systems of corruption. After all, the Primarch Guilliman of the 13th Legion was inbound, and he couldn't be arriving at a spaceport that had the taint of chaos upon it in any way. That wouldn't do. It would be considered impolite and possibly start a scandal. I'm being facetious, of course, but they really were concerned with appearances and making everything look nice and actually function for the Primarch's arrival. They hobbled together a ship out of basically spare junk parts from the detritus of the battlefield, but hey, why wouldn't they? They're literally mechanics and also have a tech marine with them. But he pilots a totally gimpy ship up to the top of the spaceport into low orbit on one engine, and when the ship should have had 3. Even the Mechanicum crew was impressed by Tetjal's innovativeness, and they felt truly blessed by the Omnissiah. They get to the port and yeah, it seems that the entire system that is controlling everything is all ate up with corruption and needs purging. But before they can get to that, they're attacked by an abomination in the elevator shaft. A Chaos Marine that has been corrupted and started to fuse with his armor. Weapons protruding from his flesh. He's an amalgamation of man and machine, seemingly possessed demonically but somehow mechanical. This is the first they see of the Obliterator Virus. The fight is rough, but it's okay. They have a Space Marine with them, and he's a Tech Marine at that. They take out the monstrosity, but it is interesting how dismissive Megas Theoclea is of the fact that it is warp-touched. She says that whatever it was nothing that couldn't be achieved by the Dark Mechanicum by ordinary means. Korf definitely disagrees, but is put in his place by the Megas. And Tetjo is also dismissed, even though this isn't the first such creature that the White Scar has faced. The story progresses and more fights break out as they make their way to the main terminal to purge the system, thus ridding it of taint. And still, all along the way, Theoclea is stating that what they are going to do is an ordinary mission, that the warp and machine cannot fuse together demonically. I guess Vashdor didn't get the memo or something. This is a story of denial. Even as the monstrosities of the Space Marines touched by the Obliterator Virus fight them repeatedly, even as she sees this proof with her own augmented cyborg robot eyes, the Megas refuses to believe what is right in front of her face. She rigidly clings to outdated, inaccurate dogma because she's so indoctrinated with the machine cult, she's blinded by her biases. And Tetjo totally recognizes that. Along the way, they have to fight through a veritable army of servitors, and their own servitors get scrapped in the process. At one point, they're literally using a gun servitor as cover to hide behind from incoming fire as it unloads its multi-laser on the enemies of the Imperium. Mostly though, this is a servitor versus servitor battle, and the battle lines were drawn more or less based on where Mechanicus Forge World was. If you were put into a loyalist or traitor army was usually not really up to you, something that Korf notes as he sees the servitors blowing each other apart. Tetjo is a beast in close combat though. He's tearing servitors apart with his bare hands at one point after emptying his magazine. The guy rips the fleshy parts off what is essentially a pre-Cataphron type of dude with a single massive pull, and then just pulps like half a human body that he snatched out of it, slamming it into the ground in one fluid motion. It was poetry. I will say this, to my own shame, but I didn't like the White Scars that much for a very, very long time. I never hated them, but to me the best part about them was Paul Sawyer's enthusiasm for them in his White Dwarf editorials. But since the Horus Heresy books have come out, and especially the Siege of Terra books, the Khan and his Star Hunters are becoming one of my favorite legions of all, seriously. And the scene where Tetjo smashes that Dark Mechanicum dude and continues just chewing through their ranks is just totally top notch and makes me want to paint White Scars. It isn't often that Tech Marines get to shine in the lore. Often one of the most overlooked characters in Warhammer. But when they do, they can really wreck some face. In this case, literally, as that battle servitor dude was reduced to a smear, essentially. Ultimately, they have fought their way to the inner sanctum of the terminal, and are at the objective, but have to hack their way into the main control room as the door is locked. And in this fighting, we lose the Tech Priest and his servitors, who it turns out were already corrupted. They were essentially part of herding the team to their doom. A classic double cross. But what do you expect from a guy with a sleazy name like Rockabani? Sounds like a guy who sells his Yngwie Malmsteen cover band CD on TV for $9.95 at 3 a.m. in 1997, not a Mechanicum Tech Priest. Megas Theoclea, Tetjo, and Korf are then confronted by the main boss of this level, or the ultimate evil that they didn't expect to have to fight. The guy controlling the Obliterators and the Dark Mechanicum forces. A corrupted thing that used to be a dreadnought, but is now more like a walking metal demon. And it is pissed. The big bad final battle takes place, and it goes sideways on multiple levels as you'd expect. The Megas has to come face to face with her own denial and gets over it quickly by dying a horrible death, as the monster cannot be subdued by her antivirus algorithm. It just consumes the antivirus and rewrites the code, simply destroying it and consuming it, subsuming it into itself, making it stronger, as it made the Magus weaker. From Era of Ruin, System Purge. Rockbani is corrupted! He's turned the servitor against us! With a speed possible only to the augmented and noospherically aware, Theoclea snapped a data cord and out across a new noospheric connection, momentarily cutting off the baleful influence from the traitor Magus. A simple enough proof of concept, Theoclea calmly announced, packets of modified data code streaming across the link even as the viral taint of Rockbani's control started to eat away at the quarantine. Once the vessel is cleansed, I shall use the evolved data to purge the master system. Foolish priests! The words rumbled out from the nightmare apparition in the sanctum in a combination of sonic and data waves so as to nearly overwhelm the senses. The bark of Tetjo's bolt pistols seemed tinny and distant. White armor blurred across Korf's vision as he looked back at the master beast, to be swatted away by a still-forming limb made part of flesh but studded with metal barbs. I am beyond your petty alphanumeric bonds. Tetjo recovered with a roll, slow and awkward compared to the legionary Korf had seen fighting within the inner walls of the Imperial Palace. With almost languid ease, twin whips of ribbed plasteel flexed out across the White Scar's legionary's chest plate, almost ripping it from its mountings as he again tumbled across the sanctum floor. Empty boasts! Theoclea's code was replicating at an exponential rate, burrowing into the combat servitor systems like armor-piercing bullets against unprotected flesh. Nothing stands outside the great cosmic artifice. All can be rendered to our knowledge through the wisdom of the machine god. You know that she's not right, young one. Korf couldn't keep his attention on both the giant machine creature and the ongoing data battle, flicking his senses from one to the other and back again. Each time he looked at the behemoth that had once been a Legion war engine, he caught glimpses of Tetjo swinging his blade and firing his pistol, neither with any noticeable effect. Shields and phasing fields sprang into life around the creature, deflecting shots, absorbing the energy of the legionary's blows. I am the Obliterator. You cannot destroy me. Broken screens flickered into life across the sanctum, displaying the same twisted Neverborn face but with varying expressions of joy, hate, anger, and misery. The voice boomed from a dozen external address systems and crackled across a score of data conduits. You cannot keep me at bay forever. I sense the approach of your ships. They do not know what awaits them. When they reach out, blindly pushing through the data fog and the last of the warp storm, I shall be waiting for their signal. I will ride the data waves and take command of them as I command this station, and as the messenger of the one destroyer, I shall have your vessels to take obliteration across the void. Magus, your anti-code will not work. You have to listen to me. Korf grabbed Theoclea's arm as he entreated her, earning himself a glance from her mask that managed to convey bottomless scorn despite the lack of expression. Unhand me. You are no better than this misguided traitor. It's not working. Korf could see the Obliterator infection gathering against the code wall, not just pushing against it, but becoming attuned to it, turning anti-code into versions of itself. Even as Theoclea's countermeasures weakened, it was growing stronger. With a boom of laughter from the sanctum, the Obliterator presence gnawed through the last of Theoclea's data shield, racing back into the systems of the combat servitor. The barrels of the multi-laser glowed for a split second, and then the Magus disappeared amidst a hail of light beams, cut to pieces by the fusillade. Korf reacted without thinking, diving through the archway into the sanctum, closer to the Obliterator fiend. It was the only place out of sight of the servitor. He heard its crashing tread as it advanced, impelled forward by the will of the Obliterator via Rockbani. The clumsy hybrid legionary would not listen to me, though I offered him the cure to his ailments. The Obliterator had finished building its new form inside the sanctum's outer chamber and turned its bulk towards Korf. Broken faces on the screens focused their attention on him, eyes glittering with scrolling lines of code. You understand the secret of obliteration. I can't read it in your data aura. Align with me and you will possess all the knowledge you seek, and great power to see your will is done. For a few moments, the voice lulled Korf into a data dream, returning to Mars as Herald of the Obliterator, ripping open its archives of the forbidden, raising up mighty edifices to the glory of the machine god as the one creator. A million servile priests labored at the data mines for his enrichment, and his name was spoken as one of the prophets of obliteration. False promises, spat Tetjo, hacking off a limb that had grown into a plasma muzzle. Superheated matter exploded across the floor, melting plasteel tiles. The quest for knowledge has true meaning, not the finding of it. I am my pain and my weakness. In time it shall make me stronger. Without effort there is no earned reward, just gratification. Its words are the shadows of clouds on the plains. Do not give them form. A fist like a battering ram smashed the legionary from his feet, hurling him into a wall of terminals. Amidst the spray of sparks, never-born faces glowered at him from the cracked screens, while wires slithered out of split plastic casing. On the Obliterator, a new plasma gun formed from the ruin of the old, coalescing into being from raw material made from regenerating flesh. In seconds, it would blast the Tech Marine into oblivion. It would obliterate him. I've seen your soul, never-born filth, snapped Korf, running forward to spear a data spine into an exposed part of the Obliterator's flank, just above an armored hip. As the tip pierced matter, Korf unleashed his own data flood. Unlike Theoclea, he had studied the metaphysical elements of the Neverborn closely, and with the last pieces provided by the tendrils of Obliterator code that had been trying to invade his noospheric senses, he had the antivirus. Not just a cleansing of scrap code, but a flex of warp-derived, ever-shifting algorithms. They quickly took on their own life, combining and feeding on the Obliterator code itself. The Obliterator bellowed in frustration as Korf hauled himself backwards. Confused, the combat servitor opened fire, blasting lethal red beams into the sanctum, slashing wounds across the metal and flesh of the beast. It responded against itself without thought, plasma and shells ripping apart the servitor. Shrieking from back down the corridor announced that the antivirus had expanded through to the other chamber and was cleansing Rakbani, shredding everything it found, data and biological consciousness combined. The vectors of the Obliterator contagion itself supplied the mapping for the new code to follow. Korf's antivirus had honed to delete the specific strain. It flowed into systems throughout the inner spaceport, leaping from terminal to terminal, turning the obliteration against itself. In Korf's senses, it blossomed like a magnificent, destructive black flower. Shuddering, the Obliterator stumbled back, unable to keep one form, haphazardly growing limbs and faces, guns and blades, while vents gushed blood and oil spewed into the air from breaking blisters. Plasma fumes wreathed from a plethora of iron-fanged mouths. A massively powerful hand grabbed Korf's cowl and yanked him from his feet. For a moment he feared Tetjo had been turned. We have to get clear of the blast, the legionary snapped, lifting Korf to his shoulder and breaking into a lopsided run. He looked back as Tetjo raced along the corridor. Plasma glare grew brighter and brighter. The purge and the explosion would gut the heart of the spaceport, not exactly restoring the systems as he had been tasked to do. Even so, Korf felt a moment of satisfaction as the brightness became white-hot and his noospheric sense burned with the screams of fracturing metacode. They rounded a corner and kept going, the lumens falling dark around them, environment filters and fans becoming stationary. The whole level was dying around them. Why did you not accept its offer? The question nagged Korf. As if he were to die in the next few seconds, he wanted to know that, of all things. And who cursed you with such crude bionics? I did, grunted Tetjo. Well, through my servitor. I used it to rig them out of warplate parts when I was the only survivor of an ambush. I would have died not far from here otherwise. If you get me out of this alive, I will get them replaced for you. We'll live, and I'll keep them. It's good to remember that flesh and machine are meant to be separate. Though it will displease my order, I feel I must agree. A boom and sudden noospheric static swept over them, followed by silence. Tetjo slowed to a stop, keeling to one side in his discomfort like a holed sailing ship. Core felt nothing, not even simple electrical impulses, except for Tetjo's warplate and his own augmetics. Total System Purge. So we see Quarf and Tetjo won the day, destroyed the spaceport for all intents and purposes, instead of simply purging the corruption of the Dark Mechanicum. I really liked seeing the Obliterator Virus and how it affects different types of units, like Mechanicum and even Dreadnoughts, which is something I haven't seen too much, if at all, before. And I thought it was fun how the super experienced but highly indoctrinated into their cult's dogma, Tech Magos was so wrong, and paid the price with her life. And how the greenhorn cyborg that didn't even have his robot legs yet and probably still had a flesh and blood cock instead of a cyberdong is the one with the knowledge and foresight to fight the enemy effectively. Great story. I liked it a lot. I will say that it is beautifully narrated in the audiobook form, but it is also very sleepy narration that I found it was hard to concentrate on at times. Once I read the print version, I liked the story a lot more. Action, adventure, ends with a bang. You can't really go wrong here with this story, as far as a fun read goes. This one is one of the better stories in Era of Ruin. I really recommend it. Gotta say, it's pretty straightforward. It doesn't have some huge lore reveal or anything, just a totally fun, good story set in the final battles of the Horus Heresy. And now that we've seen a full-on dreadnought infected with the Obliterator Virus, I think they're setting the stage for a Perturabo return, at least in miniature form. He really needs to step up on the tabletop, as he is in the lore of Warhammer 40k right now. The guy's super active for such an important character that doesn't have a model. And I remember as much as 17 or 18 years ago, back on Warseer, people had been saying Games Workshop had completed a Perturabo miniature for 40k, and it was a demon Primarch that was said to look like a giant obliterator in many ways. So I think this story is saying, hey, look what we can do. Getting us thinking about the Obliterator Virus before they unleash something as awesome as Obliterator-infected Demon Prince Perturabo, Primarch of the 4th Legion, the Iron Warriors. I mean, if you can't purge the system, then just nuke the spaceport. That's what old Jack Burton always says.